Imagine a span of more than 1,000 years when the destiny of a continent turned on waves of upheaval and renewal. This was not a mere chain of events. It was the long birth of Europe, woven from royal power, religious conviction, war, learning, and invention. In this turbulence, the foundations of the modern world were set. We begin in the early Common Era. Rome dominates the Mediterranean. It is the Pax Romana, order, prosperity, and relative peace under an efficient state and unsurpassed infrastructure. Yet at the empire's eastern edge, a quiet seed is sown: Christianity. From a small Jewish movement, it spreads steadily and reshapes a polytheistic world. By the 4th century, emperors embrace the new faith. Christianity becomes imperial, but strain is visible. Inflation, plague, famine, and pressure on the borders erode central control. In 395 CE, Rome divides, a western realm centered on Rome and an eastern realm, Byzantium, centered on Constantinople. The West, poorer and less resilient, begins to fail. Across the Rhine and Danube, Germanic peoples move. Migration swells. Frontiers buckle. Some arrive as settlers, others as conquerors, all leaving their mark as imperial power recedes. In 476 CE, Odoacer deposes Romulus Augustulus, the last Western emperor. The act is symbolic, yet decisive, an end point for the Western Empire and a threshold to what later ages call the Dark Ages. Cities contract, trade thins, learning dims, yet a crucible forms. Roman legacy, Christian faith, and barbarian traditions fuse to shape a new Europe. How does a civilization emerge from fracture? Early kingdoms consolidate amid risk. The Catholic Church becomes an organizing force, spiritual, social, and administrative. New waves of disruption follow. Vikings from the north, Magyars from the plains. In response, a layered feudal order takes shape, exchanging land, service, and protection. Under Charlemagne, learning and governance revive. A model of Christian kingship spreads across the West. Then momentum builds. Agricultural change multiplies yields. Towns expand. Trade routes knit regions together. Europe pushes outward, the Reconquista in Iberia, the Crusades to the eastern Mediterranean, ambitious, violent, and transformative. At the close of the medieval arc comes catastrophe, the Black Death. It shatters demography, unsettles economies, and tests belief. Yet from the shock, new energies rise. Technical ingenuity, the printing press, stronger monarchies, and a renaissance of art and inquiry. The groundwork of modernity is set. Join us as we read this millennium not as darkness alone, but as a long negotiation between loss and renewal. Every episode, every figure is a tessera in the mosaic of Europe's making. As Rome's twilight faded, a new era opened across a continent both unstable and full of promise. 3 core ingredients blended to shape nascent medieval Europe: the Roman legacy with its lingering administrative and legal forms, Christianity as the spiritual glue and social organizer, and the so-called barbarian peoples, bringing military strength and fresh customs. Around 500 CE, Europe's map filled with new kingdoms under barbarian rulers. Elites of mixed Roman and barbarian lineages gradually embraced Christianity, a shared faith amid fractured politics. General decline, darkness over the West. Religious unity could not heal the wounds of Rome's collapse. Cities withered as populations fell, roads and transport decayed, severing long-distance trade and the flow of news. Coinage faded. A non-monetary economy struggled to sustain professional armies. Literacy declined, dimming complex administration. Above all, peace and security became rare. Poorer, more rural, increasingly local, the Western world splintered politically and linguistically, fragile beside its rising neighbors. External pressures, the struggle to reassert power. Byzantine ambitions. In the 6th century, Justinian I sought to reconquer the West and revive Rome. Italy was briefly regained from the Ostrogoths. Yet the Lombards soon pressed in. The divide between East and West proved enduring. The dawn of the Islamic Caliphate. In the 7th century, Arab armies surged across the Middle East and North Africa with astonishing speed, forming a vast caliphate. From Rome's remnants, 3 civilizations now framed the Mediterranean: Islam, Byzantium, and a young medieval West. By the 8th century, the fragile West seemed close to being overrun. Muslim forces shattered the Visigothic kingdom in Spain and advanced into Francia. The rise of the Carolingians in 732, Charles Martel's Frankish forces checked the Islamic advance at Tours, a defense that preserved the West and set the stage for Carolingian power. Pepin the Short consolidated authority, and Charlemagne, his son, forged a broad empire over much of Latin Christendom. In 800 C, Pope Leo Roman III crowned Charlemagne Emperor of the Romans, a revival of Western imperial authority after more than 3 centuries. More than a military realm, the Carolingian world became a center of learning and administration, recovering classical texts and planting the ideal of a united Christian West. Consequences: the birth of feudalism. Even this formidable empire proved fragile. Weak infrastructure, a thin economy, and limited communications constrained rule. After Charlemagne's death, the Treaty of Verdun in 843 fractured the realm into West Francia and East Francia, France and Germany's early outlines. Fragmentation deepened as fresh invasions swept in during the 9th and 10th centuries. Vikings from the north, Magyars from the east, Muslim raiders from the south. Royal power waned, local lords rose. Europe bristled with fortresses where nobles governed and peasants labored. Heavy cavalry ascended, shaping a warrior aristocracy. From these pressures emerged feudalism, a dense web of personal bonds, where land and protection were exchanged for loyalty and military service. Kings often stood in the shadow of powerful vassals. More than a military system, feudalism became the political, economic, and social framework of the West for centuries, setting the stage for the transformations to come. After centuries of chaos and fragmentation, a new dawn broke across the European continent. Around the year 1000, a decisive turning point arrived. External invasions subsided as Vikings and Magyars settled and integrated into the Christian world. The climate shifted to a more favorable phase. Europe finally gained the stability to begin a 300-year era of growth and prosperity. The High Middle Ages, internal engines of growth, agricultural revolution, urbanization, and culture. A sweeping agricultural revolution powered the revival. New tools and techniques, the heavy plow, the horse collar, 3-field rotation, combined with warmer weather to lift yields. Surpluses followed and populations surged. Villages multiplied, forests fell to fields, and the landscape was remade. Trade revived on a broad scale, towns expanded and markets thrived. A rising merchant class reshaped urban life, pushing for charters and self-government, most vivid in the Italian communes where Mediterranean commerce roared back. As living standards improved, the arts, architecture, and music flourished. Learning moved beyond monasteries, literacy rose. Under church patronage, the first universities appeared, opening a new intellectual horizon. Expanding frontiers, Europeanization and conquest, internal strength turned outward. Nobles conquered and colonized new territories, extending Christendom's borders in a process often called the Europeanization of Europe. In 1066, William of Normandy invaded and remade England, a Norman stronghold thereafter. Across Iberia, northern Christian kingdoms pressed the Reconquista against Muslim polities in the south. Norman adventurers seized southern Italy and Sicily from Byzantine and Muslim rule. Ambition reached farther still. In 1095, Pope Urban Roman II called the First Crusade to recover the Holy Land. The Crusader states were short-lived, yet they signaled Europe's growing confidence and reach. The rise of major powers, the church and royal authority. Power at home was transformed. The Catholic Church reformed and centralized, becoming a hierarchical institution of immense authority, the papacy acting with near-monarchical command. Its influence touched spiritual life and politics alike. In parallel, kings sought to consolidate their realms. Despite the pull of a warrior nobility and the culture of chivalry, royal authority advanced in several regions. Power in contrast, unity and fragmentation. Consolidation was uneven. In England and France, the Anglo-Normans and Capetians built stronger, more centralized states, early foundations of modern nations. In the Holy Roman Empire, the pattern reversed. That once mighty realm fractured into duchies and principalities. Efforts by emperors such as Frederick Barbarossa to restore old grandeur faltered, leaving the imperial title largely symbolic. Thus, even within a shared age of growth, Europe's political paths diverged sharply. And beyond this golden ascent, a darker horizon gathered. A catastrophe soon to test the very foundations of the civilization just built. Europe's dazzling age of growth ended abruptly around 1300. A darker climate settled in, harvests failed, famine spread, and resilience thinned. Yet the worst still lay ahead, a calamity that would shake the continent to its core. The ultimate crisis, the Black Death. In 1347, an invisible enemy arrived. Plague later feared as the Black Death. It moved with terrifying speed from crowded ports to quiet villages. Within a few years, roughly 1/3 of Europe's people were gone. Settlements emptied, families broke, fear became ordinary life. Waves of recurrence followed for centuries, leaving a permanent scar on memory and society. Response and adaptation, creativity rising from the ashes. From devastation came unexpected change. Social change. With so many dead, labor grew scarce. Surviving peasants and workers gained leverage. Land was more available, wages climbed. When elites tried to reverse these gains, uprisings erupted. Most were crushed. Yet over time, freedoms widened and the old feudal order cracked in the West. Innovation accelerated, windmills and eyeglasses spread. And above all, Gutenberg's press transformed the movement of knowledge. In Italy's reviving cities, the Renaissance bloomed. Humanists looked back to Greece and Rome, and forward to a new vision of the human person and the world. They labeled the prior millennium the Dark Ages, casting themselves as a bridge from medieval to modern. A shift in power, the military revolution and the birth of the sovereign state. Change reached warfare and the state itself. Gunpowder altered the battlefield. Artillery shattered the strongest walls. Handheld firearms let common infantry fell armored knights at a distance. The age of the mounted knight and the feudal fortress waned. New armies were costly, only kings could sustain them. By financing infantry and artillery, monarchs consolidated authority. Nobles, stripped of exclusive military power, increasingly served as administrators and courtiers. A modern sovereign state emerged, a strong center with a standing army and the means to enforce its will. Endings and transitions, the dawn of the modern age. In the late Middle Ages, these rising states were tested. The 100 Years' War closed with England expelled from the continent, national identity hardening in both England and France. In Iberia, the marriage of Ferdinand and Isabella unified Spain. Granada fell in 1492, the Reconquista complete. Thus England, France, and Spain set firm national foundations, while Germany and Italy remained fragmented for centuries. As the medieval era drew to its close, Europe had not only recovered, it had been remade on more dynamic foundations. Attention turned outward. Portugal pushed along Africa and into the Indian Ocean. And in 1492, Spain looked west. Columbus crossed the Atlantic and reached the Americas. That voyage marked a threshold, closing the medieval world and opening the modern age. An era of global expansion began, one in which Europe, tempered by a millennium of upheaval, reshaped the world we inhabit today.